Okay, so like I said, we're going to be taking our notes today on fractions and decimals on the number line. The learning target is I can graph rational numbers on the number line. We talked about on Friday what a rational number is. Remember, a rational number is any number that can be written as a fraction. So we're going to be graphing integers, fractions, and decimals. An integer, if you remember back to last year, we talked about an integer is a positive or a negative whole number. It's just your -1, -2, -3, -4, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? So when we talk about integers on the number line, we need to talk about how a number line is set up. So we've got our 0 in the middle. And then your positive numbers are going to go to the right. So we've got our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Our numbers get bigger at the further right we move. And then as we move to the left, those are our negative numbers. You're going to move left for those. So -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. It's kind of the mirror image of the positive side. You're moving backwards when you go negative. So if we want to graph fractions on our number line, remember a second ago we talked about the number 3/4. And we talked about that 3/4 is more than nothing, but it's not a whole. So it's in between 0 and 1. So we're going to kind of like zoom in on this 0 and 1 on our number line. So we're going to put 0 on our number line. And we're going to break this up into 4 equal parts. My denominator, remember, of a fraction tells me how many equal parts I have. So I'm going to break this up into 4 equal parts. So my very first line is going to be 1/4. My next line would be 2/4, 3/4, and 1 whole. Because 4/4 is 1 whole. Then I can graph my 3/4 right there. Like I said earlier, the biggest thing is making sure that you know between what 2 whole numbers is my fraction. So 3/4 would be between 0 and 1. I'm going to count 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. There's my dot. Graphing decimals on the number line. Let's say we want to graph 3/10. You're only going to be graphing tenths and some that are to the hundredths. So we'll talk about the hundredths in a little bit. But if they're to the tenths, how many equal parts will I have? If it's 3/10, we're going to have 10. So what 2 whole numbers is it in between? What number is before the decimal? 0. And then it'd be between 1. So between 0 and 1. Think money when you have decimals. I have 30 cents. I have more than nothing, but I don't quite have 1 whole dollar. So I've got my 0 right there. And then I'm going to number 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, 5/10, 6/10, 7/10, 8/10, 9/10, and then what comes after 9/10? 1 whole. Put your dot on the 3/10. Now, as we move into the examples, I'm not going to be having you number these every time. You can just number the wholes and then the number that you're graphing. You don't have to number these. But for the note's sake, I want you to have these graphs in case you need to look back. Okay, so taking a look at example 1, we're going to graph 3/8 on the number line. So we first have to think about what 2 whole numbers is 3/8 in between. So because it's just a fraction, it's not a mixed number, it means it's going to be between 0 and 1. There is no whole number in front of it. So it's between 0 and 1. So I'm going to put 0 on my number line. And because it's 3/8, I know I'm going to have 8 equal parts. That denominator tells me my equal parts. So on my number line, I can just count 1/8, 2/8, 3/8. So I'm going to put a dot on my 3/8 and label it 3/8. And I'm going to keep counting. 4/8, 5/8, 6/8, 7/8, 8/8. There's my 1 whole. So on example 2, we've got graph 1 and 4/5 on the number line. When I read that mixed number, it's 1 and 4/5. So that means I have 1 and a little bit more. So I know that it's going to be between 1 and 2 because I have 1 whole plus a little bit more. So I've got my 1 whole, and then I have 1 and 1/5, 1 and 2/5, 1 and 3/5, 1 and 4/5. What is 1 and 5/5 going to be? 2. So on the back side on example 3, we're going to start with negative numbers now. Negative 2 and 3/7. It works the exact same way as the positives, except you're going to move left instead of right. So if I have negative 2 and 3/7, that fraction is still going to be between negative 2, and because it's negative, I'm going to move left. We're going to move left for negatives. So we have negative 2 and 1/7, negative 2 and 2/7. There's my negative 2 and 3/7. Oops, I wrote 4s. I don't know why. And then that would be 4/7, 5/7, 6/7. So negative 2 and 7/7. What is that? That's going to actually be negative 3. Because remember, we're moving backwards. So now in example 4, we're going to graph negative 3/10 on the number line. In the notes prior, we did a positive 3/10. Now we're going the other way. So it's still going to be between 0, but this time it's going to be between 0 and negative 1. So it's a negative 3/10. But we're still breaking it up into 10 equal pieces. So there's negative 1/10, negative 2/10, there's negative 3/10. Negative 4/10, negative 5/10, negative 6/10, negative 7, negative 8, negative 9. So negative 1/10, or negative 10/10 is negative 1 whole. So negative 3/10 is between 0 and negative 1. Remember, my positive 3/10 was between 0 and a positive 1. Because it's negative, I just work the other way. Now we have our hundredths. Am I going to make you break it up into 100 equal pieces? No way. I couldn't give you a number line big enough to do that. And that's just mean. So we're going to graph hundredths. So we're going to graph it same way we did tenths. But instead, so we know that 45 hundredths is still going to be, if I think about it, 45 cents between 0 and 1. Instead of numbering these by 1/10, isn't 10 hundredths the exact same thing? 1/10 is the same thing as 10 hundredths. Reduces, right? 10 hundredths reduces to 1/10. It's the exact same thing. 1/10 and 10 hundredths is the exact same thing. It's a different way to think about it. When you write out money, if you write 0.1, it's the same thing as 10 cents. Okay, so if we number these by tens, now again, you're not going to have to number these every time, but I want you to see this. If I think about this as 10 hundredths, 20 hundredths, 30 hundredths, 40 hundredths, 50 hundredths, where does 45 hundredths fall on that? It's going to fall between your 40 hundredths and 50 hundredths. It's right in here. Halfway between. So then this would be 60, 70, 80, 90, $1. Think about it in terms of money. It's 45 cents. That's between 40 cents and 50 cents. We're not ever going to go out to the thousands, so don't worry about that. We're only going to do tenths and hundredths on the number line. So now, example 6, when I graph 2.8. 2.8, think about it as $2.80, is between 2 and 3. I have $2. I don't quite have $3. So there's my 2. 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, 2.5, 2.6, 0.7, 0.8. There's my 2.8. 2.9, and 3. You have to know what two whole numbers it's in between, and then just count up.